Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're going to begin a study today that I'm calling Four Women. And we're going to look at the four women who are mentioned in Jesus' lineage. Those who are specifically referred to, those are Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba, who are mentioned in Matthew's Gospel in his lineage of Jesus. We're going to look at them and their stories and ask ourselves why did Matthew make sure we remembered them and their stories? Why are their stories important to our story as the redeemed, and particularly to Jesus' story, because they are all grandmothers of Jesus himself. So that's what we're going to do for the next several sessions. I wanted today to start by talking about genealogies in first century, particularly ancient Jewish genealogies. All four Gospels start somewhere, and the earliest Gospel seems to be Mark and then Matthew, although some think Matthew comes before Mark. Mark, then Matthew, then Luke, then John. And each Gospel writer goes a little further back in time. Um, Mark starts with the ministry of John the Baptist. Um, Matthew provides a lineage for Jesus that goes all the way back to Abraham. Luke's lineage is longer. Luke provides a lineage that goes backwards instead of forwards, starts with Jesus and goes back in time all the way to Adam. This is in Luke chapter 3, the end of Luke chapter 3. Who is called the Son of God. God is the source of Adam. And so we have a connection of Jesus all the way back to God himself. That's what Luke does in Luke chapter 3. Matthew in Matthew chapter 1 doesn't go as far back as Luke does. Of course, he's the second longest. He goes to Abraham. We're going to look at his in a second. But John goes all the way back to before creation. In the beginning was the Word. He goes all the way back to before God said, "Let there be light," and said that, tells us that Jesus was there. Jesus was the Word by which God, through whom God created the universe. Matthew's gospel is begins with this lineage in chapter 1, verses 1 through 16. I want us to read it first because there's some things that just leap out and tell us something about what he's trying to do with this lineage. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. To Abraham was born Isaac, to Isaac Jacob, to Jacob Judah and his brothers. And to Judah were born Perez and Zerah by Tamar. And to Perez was born Hezron, and to Hezron Ram. And to Ram was born Amminadab, and to Amminadab Nachshon, and to Nachshon Salmon. And to Salmon was born Boaz by Rahab. And to Boaz was born Obed by Ruth. And to Obed Jesse, and to Jesse was born David the king. And to David was born Solomon by her who had been the wife of Uriah. And to Solomon was born Rehoboam, and on and on and on, until we get to Jacob was born Joseph, the husband of Mary, by whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. Therefore, all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David to the deportation of Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation to Babylon to the time of Christ, 14 generations. So this is the lineage, the genealogy that has been provided. So what do we notice? Well, we notice the symmetry between Abraham to David, that's 14. David to the Babylonian captivity, that's 14. The captivity to the birth of Jesus, another 14. So 3 14s equals 6 7s, which means we're not finished yet. So it's highly stylized. We see that and the symmetry, and he tells us from the very beginning that he's wanting to trace Jesus back to David and then back to Abraham. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, and ultimately the son of God. Because did you notice how precisely he words the birth of Jesus? And Jacob was born Joseph, the husband of Mary. By whom? By Mary. By whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. So he in no way says that Jesus is a biological genetic heir of Joseph. So if that's true, then why is the lineage here? Well, maybe this is a matrilineal lineage. Um, we don't know. If it were a true matrilineal lineage, nobody kept those in the first century, mother to mother to mother to mother. However, it is true that in the first century and to this day, many Jews considered you to be Jewish if your mother was Jewish. Judaism, in other words, is inherited matrilineally. And so Timothy had a Greek father, but he had a Jewish mother, and he was raised Jewish, and he wasn't circumcised yet. And before Paul would take him on the road, he circumcised him. So maybe this is a matrilineal lineage. Anyway, it's very stylized, and if it doesn't completely match up with Luke, he's trying to list the highlights so that there's 14, 14, 14, making 6 sevens perfectly acceptable. His historiography in his day, genealogical science practice in his day. So he may have left some, maybe several generations out along the way to arrive at 14, 14, 14. And so, and also Luke's may not be matrilineal at all. Luke is a Gentile. It may not be important to him to do that. So, and he's not, he's writing to Gentiles. He's not writing to Jews as Matthew is. So there are a lot of reasons why Matthew's and Luke's are not exactly the same, but both link Jesus to David and then to Abraham. And that's important because the two covenants Jesus will fulfill, the everlasting covenants that he will fulfill, are the covenant God made to Abraham: in your seed, all the world will be blessed, and the covenant that God made with David: your throne will be everlasting. Jesus is the person who fulfills both those promises that God made, those eternal promises that God made first to Abraham and then to David. And so it's important for Matthew to connect those together. Now, this is what is not expected, that we have so many women mentioned other than his mother, but we do. And these women, they're not the women you might expect to be mentioned by name at all in anyone's lineage for a variety of reasons. We'll talk about them as a group next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.